everybody. Welcome to Gosh, I'm so excited for this week. We've got the one and only Reed Diamond here with us.
Yes!
Yes! Reed, of course, plays Daniel Whitehall on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., aka the Kraken, aka Werner Reinhardt. We get to delve into this episode with him by our sides, and also just I've got so many questions about all the millions of jobs you've done over the years. Just a phenomenal actor, so I'm excited to dive in. Welcome along.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this ever since you emailed me. This is gonna be so much fun. And I love you so much. You know, you're just so, I mean, obviously everybody loves you, but like, you know, I've watched some of these and everyone talks about what a welcoming set it was, but like, you know, you guys were just like, you know, I've been around a long time and sets aren't like that all the time. And you were so sweet. I just loved you right away. And then every time we got to see each other, we didn't really have much to do together, but, you know, everyone was super just sweet and friendly. And then, we were just reminiscing. We've gotten to go to Blackpool together, which is very exciting. And now if anytime in any form, if I hear about Sheffield, I immediately think of you. So, and what did you say? Like Sheffield is like the flatware capital of England. What's you've had something.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Yes, right? It was the stainless steel capital of the world. Yeah, so we would make silverware, cutlery.
Right.
Yeah. So your memory is so amazing. That's crazy. Right. Let's press play so that we get that done because.
Sync. I feel like this is like a commando mission. We're synchronizing our watches and we're counting down.
Yeah, exactly. We're like SEAL Team 6. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, play.
Okay, it's play.
Okay. I'm gonna have. Oh my God, mine just stopped.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Let me see if my Wi-Fi.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we'll see how we do. Yes. Right. So we start in this interrogation room, and obviously like we don't have to stick to the episode necessarily, but I mean I just have so many questions.
Oh yes, so this is like there's so much going on in this episode,
so much,
and I gotta tell you right off the bat, you know, I was a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was a comic book collector in the right. So in fact, when this came out, I was obsessed with Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I collected comic books from the 60s and the 70s, which was my time. And I remember when the episodes premiered, I would take photographs from my comic book collection of these comics, Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Stop it right now.
Yeah, I know. So, and I was always, I was obsessed with Hydra, and I was obsessed with all those guys. So like on my first day of shooting in the first episode, on my second day of shooting, where we're back in World War II, there's Neil playing, Dum Dum Donegan, and, it was just all these guys from my childhood, from my comic books, because I also was a follower of Sergeant Fury, which was sort of the precursor to Nick Fury. He was in World War II with all those guys, and then I don't know what happened. Then they became sort of Marvel's James Bond. So it was super exciting for me. And then Marvel's my jam, and my dream was always to play a villain in the Marvel universe somewhere. So this was a dream come true. And then here we are with Deachin, it was lovely because Deachin and I got to be reunited because we met. That's how I came into this whole world, was through Dollhouse.
Yes. Okay. So so Dollhouse was a TV show that was amazing that then Deachin was also in, that Mo and Jed.
That's where I met those guys. Yeah.
Create show ran. Did they know? So Marissa Tancherone, Jed Whedon were our co-creators.
Right.
Did they know your obsession with Marvel and just how deep that went?
I don't think so. I mean, I just know that we, on Dollhouse, we hit it off because how can you not? They're so incredibly delightful. And they wrote amazing episodes that that was an amazing character that I got to play on Dollhouse. And so that was my introduction to that world. And so, but this Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, which is so funny here, because as you know, television, things happen very, very quickly.
Yes.
Right. So, so even going backwards, when I heard you guys, they were doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I was so upset that I wasn't on it. Like, because I remember we were all at the premiere of Much Ado About Nothing that Joss had directed.
Yes,
they're all there and they're about to start production on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm like, oh, I want to be on your show. I so want to be on the show because I was obsessed with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And first season, I'm like, every time I could barely watch it because I was like, why am I not on this show? And then right before the second season started, I kept getting these, I got a call from my agent and they go, I think you're going to get an offer on a character on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I go, oh, this is so great. This is so great. And then eventually Mo reached out to me and she's like, look, it's going to happen, but we can't tell you anything about it. You still have to get approved by ABC, blah, 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 blah. So about 3 weeks, I knew that I was probably going to be on the show if I got through all of the gates, but I didn't know anything about the character. So then finally, they call me up. Jed and Marissa are on the phone together, like, okay, you got it. We're so excited. Here's the character you're going to play. You're going to start in like 3 days. Can you do a German accent?
Oh my gosh, stop it.
Right? No, of course, because that's the only way it goes, because I had 3 weeks where I could have been working on this German accent. I'm like, right. So like, and so, I came down from my costume fitting, and this is also a funny story. I play a lot of guys in suits. I play a lot, and talking about how fast television goes. They'll usually go like, they'll go, what are your sizes? And I'll go, hey, we got to do this fitting really quickly. I walk right into a Hugo Boss suit. And they're like, okay, so Hugo Boss is the suit I always wear for whatever lawyer, FBI agent I'm playing.
Sure.
So I show up for my fitting, and this is the first time I'm going to try on an SS uniform.
Wow.
From a German or Nazi SS uniform. Well, I walked right into it because I don't know if you know, fun fact, the Hugo Boss designed the SS uniforms.
Yes.
Right?
Randomly, I did know that.
Right. Because it's like Hugo Boss's dirty little secret. So, it was
it fit you perfectly.
Like a glove, like no alterations necessary to, but I did have to, it was an impossible outfit to get into. So for the first time in my career, I had Radford would dress me. I had a person come into my, and he'd have to put everything together for me. And it felt very old Hollywood. I felt very spoiled to have someone who had to put all my buttons and epaulettes and Sam Brown belt, et cetera, together.
Yeah. Was that kind of a cool way to get into character? Because that's how Werner would have been, right? Somebody would have had to have come in and do those ones because you can't do. Do you think that's like a status thing that they had their suits like that, so somebody else had to kind of dress them?
Well, of course, I think that's a genius observation. I would expect nothing less, and that's absolutely. I'm sure. Of course, you had to have your Batman because there's any officer could get into all that gear by themselves. You need another set of hands.
Yeah.
Eyes.
That's cool that. Anne Foley, I feel like, was the costume designer at this point, right? That's cool that she stuck so clearly to that, because they could have just done fake buttons or like, Velcro on the inside or whatever. That's nice that, it was as it would have been and made kind of authentically. Yeah, no, it was, it was super cool. But then learning the German accent in a weekend. Yeah. So how did you do that? So hang on. Sorry. Yeah. No, go. You'd heard, you didn't know who the character is. You just spoke, you heard that an offer was coming. Mo and Jed call you. They go, hey, this is happening. One small thing, German accent required. That's all you knew, that he had a German accent? Well, it was even funny because Jed was like, in the comic books, he's British, but we're thinking about making him German. I'll get back to you on which one it's going to be. Right. And I was like, okay, but I'm a keener. I'm like, yeah, great. And then I go to my fitting, and he was at the fitting, and he came up with the glasses thing. He goes, I have this image of you shining your little glasses, and that's how we'll tie Second World War Daniel Whitehall into contemporary. We'll see that, and we're like, oh, that's the same guy. And then he goes, I think we'll go with German. So I do my first scene on a Friday. I probably had the fitting on a Thursday. I do my first scene on a Friday, and it's me and Simon. It's sort of the tag end of that first episode where we're in contemporary times, where we're watching the video, and you see that now Daniel Whitehall exists now. And then I'm zooming down to Comic-Con to promote another show. You guys are down there at Comic-Con.
And I zoomed down there, and the night before I'd gone, there's this great sort of dialect database, and I'd sifted through where they have real people, they speak a speech, so you can, and so I figured I'd sort of pick that he would be from Bavaria, so I found a Bavarian accent, and I'm just like in the car ride down to Comic-Con, just listening over and over and over again and trying to come up with the German accent that I'm going to do first thing Monday morning. And
after Comic-Con, that is, but like, it's like you have a lobotomy when you come back from Comic-Con. It's so exhausting, and there's just no energy left. The thought of you starting a new show on Friday with, I mean, at least you had Simon Kassianides playing Bakshi, who's also a sweetheart, but still, you know, you've got this new character. Then you drive to San Diego, doing your homework in the car, have a full weekend of press that's not nutty. And then on Monday, you're playing a German again. I mean, and also all your scenes were with like Haley Atwell playing Peggy Carter and then Kyle MacLachlan. It's like, this wasn't just, hey, come and do a couple words. You had these monologues.
Oh, and it's the thing was too, like, I remember, well, I said that because so we come back. So we're shooting down in like San Pedro, Long Beach for the World War II stuff, where all the we're dum down, all the Howling Commandos are bursting in with Haley Atwell, and we've got all the people have been neutralized by the obelisk, and it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and we're down there, and they'd given me like a tape of a dialect coach, and she'd done all my lines for me, and so we were in the same page. So everyone, the German accent was happening, but I show up and everybody's there, like everybody, like, you know, you've got all the producers, you've got all the Marvel people, they're all sitting by Video Village, and I'd had this character for 4 days, 5 days, and you're just going like. At one point, I turned to the director and I go, "It's fun creating a character in front of everybody, right? You know, because you're just like, you're going, I hope this works, you know, and because that's the thing, you know, it's you're rehearsing in public, right? And you're trying to find what works, and also as you know, like, you know, those first days you're operating on so many levels because you're meeting people and you're being social and you're trying to create a character, and but you know, everyone was completely lovely and it went quite well, but it was a harrowing sort of, you know, shot out of a cannon. But it was exciting too because it's funny. Well, it was, in fact, during Comic-Con, the show I was promoting, one of the actors was Toby Jones. So he'd been in, he'd played a German in I guess the one with Red Skull. So that's the first Captain America, and he'd been in the other, I guess, the Avengers movie. And so, or was it the second Captain America? They all come the same. But I was like, I'd spent all weekend trying to pitch this guy too, because I'm going, okay, you know, Red Skull is up here, and then Loki's here. I'm like, where do you find this guy? And then also he's on TV. So, you know, how can you be sort of, for want of a better word, how can you be a supervillain, but it's got to fit inside the frame of this thing? And who is this guy, you know, in the pantheon? Like, where does he land? So finding his instrument, as it were, in the symphony. And I remember talking to him about it. I go, I think I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. But it's interesting. It was one of the most like challenging, in so many ways, parts I've ever done. I have a joke where I went to drama school. I went to this silly drama school in Manhattan called Juilliard in America.
Oh my gosh, extremely famous, prestigious drama school. Yes. But
I feel like I make this joke. I always feel like the Whedon family, their sole mission is to actually make me use that training. there was a period, I don't know, like 2012. I turned to my wife and I'm like, what hell did I go to Juilliard? I go, I'm never going to do Shakespeare again, right? And then cut to like a week later, I get a text or an email from Joss, like, do you want to do Shakespeare? Sure. And then doing this, doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and playing this guy, I had to use all of that training because I was like, he's going to hold himself in a different way and he's going to speak in a different way. And so it was I was joking to Joss. It's like I went to like super villain boot camp,
Yeah.
and I was just like, this is really just like, okay, and just working things out. And I'm glad he got to come back multiple times in other seasons, because
Yeah.
what I felt like right when he got killed, or sorry, spoiler alert, but I'm sure you've all seen season
Yeah.
2. If you haven't,
It's okay.
tough rock.
We're safe.
Yeah, get out of here. Um, it was like, I was like, I'm just getting it, because it was,
Yeah.
you know, it was so much fun, but it was like, I mean, here's the scene with Haley, and I still think about this scene.
Oh my gosh, it's such a brilliant scene
Yeah.
because it's so simple, and that's when you really get to see masters at work, when you can just have two people sitting opposite each other at a table with, you know, you've each got this beautiful spotlight on your faces, and that's it. That's the whole thing, and it's kind of a battle of you know, who can play the other one the best. It's like it's you know, a staring competition and intense, but you both have this twinkle in your eye. And how is that as an actor to, I mean, Haley's
Amazing.
gorgeous and wonderful, you know,
Yeah.
but is that hard to just only be able to sit down at a table, or is that kind of, is that a treat to then go, okay, I'm going to have to really, you know, just use my voice now, because you can't gesticulate really, or, you know, move, you know, throw things around.
I think for me personally, well, it might be a lazy actor thing, but I'm always looking for a chair in a scene,
Sure.
because you don't have access to, you can't gesticulate in the same way. So
Yeah.
it requires a certain stillness from you. So
Yeah.
then you can really, I mean, this, but also like that was a beautifully written scene, right? Beautifully
Yeah.
written. She's
Yeah.
amazing. So you're working with like an awesome actor who's like come loaded for, you know, just ready to, you know, loaded for bear. And then
Yeah.
it's also directed by my buddy Mylan Shaloff.
Yeah.
And so Mylan is just an amazing director, and, you know,
Yeah.
used to be an actor. In fact, my wife, as a teenager, acted. She was the lead of a Disney show in the '80s that Mylan was like played their best friend. So
Oh
my
my
wife and
gosh.
Mylan go back to the '80s for this show called The Edison Twins, like the first Disney Channel show. And then I've been lucky enough to work with him as a director all the time. But he's an amazing actor, but he's also a great actor's director. I'm sure you found like
Yes,
he
and he
really
has kind of
cares.
that presence too, that sort of timeless poise about him that I feel
Yeah.
like was perhaps very useful for Daniel Whitehall to kind of, you know, I can imagine him giving you notes and it coming from that place of secure authority, that then that's kind of what you would then be playing as Daniel Whitehall. That's interesting. I had no idea you went back so far with Mylan.
He's an amazing guy. But you know, and I was very excited because this was sort of all the episodes I did as this character, this one was the where I had the most to do, and I had to, you know, age and do all that makeup, you know, the brilliant RJ makeup. And that was a funny story too, because
Yeah.
RJ needed to do a cast of my head. And so he's like, I'll come to you. And then my wife was like, well, how about you have him do it at school? Because my daughter was in like first grade then, and we'll invite all the kids to watch him do it. And he was like, totally game. So he drove up to Los Olivos, and we got a classroom, and all like the whole school came and watched while I had, you know, because they have to put this goop all over your head, and they put in little air, you know, holes for you and straws
Yeah.
so you can breathe while it sets, while they make the mold. And I remember like a lot of the kids were very stressed that I was going to die, that I couldn't breathe, right?
Well, yeah, because it looks crazy. It's quite claustrophobic too, because you don't, you know, you can't see anything, and all you have are these little straws to breathe out of. Was that like, how long is it on there?
It feels, I think it's on there. It's on there for at least like 20 minutes, but it could be longer
I
for
feel
it to
like it's
set.
longer, right?
It
Yeah.
probably is. But you know, I was trying to crack jokes with my hands for the kids, right? They were, you know,
Because
still
you can't speak, right? You
yes,
can't
you can't do
move your
anything,
face.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't move at all.
What an amazing thing to do. That's so thought. This is why you're just a brilliant actor too, is that you're so like, you, somebody gives you one thing and you go, okay, I'm not just going to do a German accent. I'm going to figure out exactly the region that that person's from and figure out how it fits into the universe of the comics that you've read for decades and then collected religiously. that you don't just go, oh, brilliant, I'll just do a pseudo German accent. You go, no, I'm gonna like hardcore go for this and question everybody that is at Comic-Con, like the perfect crowd of people to go, I'm playing this Hydra agent on Monday morning. Like, where do you think I should place it? And wow, that's so cool. I had no idea. So after you get them all done, this is for the kind of flashback scenes when
where you
Daniel
see him
Whitehall is
age, right? Because
Werner.
he's in
Yes.
prison. Yeah.
Yes. So you get them all done in front of
Yeah.
terrified children at the school. What an amazing thing to do. Then RJ goes away, who's the special effects makeup artist, and what does he do then? Make a mask?
Yeah, because what he did, because it was all pieces and down to I remember the most striking detail is he's like, when you get old, your earlobes sag. So I had these earlobe pieces that would be down here. In fact, I was just in preparation for talking to you, I found a bunch of pictures because the first thing he does is he makes a full bald cap of you. So like I took pictures in the makeup show of the bald cap, and then you age. And it was really cool. I mean, it's, you're putting the jowls in, and they made a wig. And I mean, it was super exciting and super fun. And then to do, I mean, once you've done prosthetics once, it's good. You're good. You don't need to do it again.
Yeah.
But it's a funny story. I was just thinking when you were talking about the German accent just now, it was problematic, right? So the first time I did the German accent was in that first big scene with the obelisk and everyone bursts in and I get arrested by Agent Carter. And it was, that was probably, I don't know, it was a 4-page scene. It was a big scene. And I had to loop it. They made me, where I'd done the whole German accent, they're like, we need you to do it a little more clearly. We're worried that the German accent is going to be too difficult for people to understand at home.
Right.
And I remember like, I very rarely I was like, I worked really hard on that accent. I was like, it's authentic. The woman from West Germany said that, we're from Bavaria, said that was the right accent. So I just went into, and I remember going to have that talk with myself, like, you got to do it. This is going to have to get done. Yeah. And so I just went into the looping booth and I did it exactly the same. And they were like, perfect. Perfect. I was like, great.
That's a seasoned actor right there. I'm just gonna humor them and do it.
And cut to later when I came back for one of the episodes where I was in prison again, they said, okay, he's sort of halfway through his becoming Americanized, so just do a little bit of the German accent. And then they missed it. They go, no, actually, then I had to loop it again. And they go, no, we want more of the German accent. So then I went back into the booth and just redid it, which is, now it was fun. But I was nervous because you're like, it's so funny when you do an accent. I mean, anyone who reads their own comments on any of the social media platforms is a moron. But I can be a moron every once in a while. And you got German people going, that is not a real accent. And I'm like, fuck it is. The one German person said it was. And that was like, that's how little Haley and I, we hit it off right away because we were doing the scene. And she goes, your German accent's so good. And I was like, oh, thank you. Because I was like, it was the second time I had to do it on the show. And I'm like, I had all this noise because like the Germans, a couple of people said, they were like, everyone's a critic. But
of course. Well, there's been, so Zach is usually here to, I don't know why I'm doing this as if he's right here.
That's where he sits.
That's where he sits, just right here. To read the comments and ask questions that come through. And I have them just kind of next to the Zoom. And there's been a few that have been like, somebody from Germany, oh my gosh, let me see if I can find it, said that your accent was really good. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to find you now. It's going back some to get your name out there, but oh my gosh, and people are saying, Emily's saying about Diechen, Enver, you, Amy Acker, all in Dollhouse, and how we were so lucky with getting so many of you guys over to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. From Dollhouse. I can't find the comment now, but basically somebody was from Germany and sent your accent was brilliant, and just
Dankeschön. Thank you.
Dankeschön, yeah. That also people that are commenting, I'm gonna go. I'll answer some. The ones that we don't get to, I'm gonna answer them in the podcast. Brilliant. So don't worry. And maybe at the end, I'll kind of do a little run through to make sure that we haven't missed anything. But basically, all the comments are saying you're so interesting and you're effervescent. Oh, here's a good question from Rachel, who says, are there any differences between filming a show movie set in the present compared to a period piece? Which is that's a kind of awesome question, because you did both in this. Do you approach it differently as an actor depending on what time period you're in? Or
it's, that's a great question. I mean, I think, it just goes back to your sort of acting basics. So you need to know what a person's life would have been like in that time. And that's what, hence that conversation about posture. People conducted themselves, they held themselves, certainly a man of that, especially of that class and of that rank. They just had a different way of behaving. There was no slouching, right? So there's so you're putting in those little things. That's what, so the only difference is you just have to be aware of the given circumstances of that time. Right. But it's funny, for the first part of my career, I almost only did period pieces. And I really started to get a complex about it. I go, maybe I'm not a contemporary person. I was like, maybe no one will accept me as a contemporary human. But, and it's like, I mean, I love doing period pieces. I mean, my first movie was set in the Second World War, a bomber crew, this movie called Memphis Belle, and we were in England for 4 months shooting. So I love doing period pieces. And this one, I mean, obviously, to be on a Marvel show is just beyond exciting, especially for someone who's just a huge Marvel nerd. And then to play a villain, that's always been my dream. Because my favorite, I mean, there was, and Joss didn't even know about this, but back in the 70s, they put out these compendium books of Marvel books. They put out, they were basically, the first two were origin stories. So they print in a sort of a book form, the first Thor and the first Iron Man. So you saw their origin stories. And then when I was about 9, this book came out called Bring on the Bad Guys. And it was a compendium of a bunch of the supervillains. So it had Dr. Doom, and it had Red Skull, and it had Loki. It had It'll Come to Me. But I was very lucky. I got to go, because my dad, through his work in New York City, I got to go to the release party with all the Marvel people. So there was this release party at the top of some ad building in Manhattan off of Madison Avenue, and everyone's there. All of the old artists, John Romita's there, and Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee's there. Oh my God! And it was set up for kids, right? So they had, I remember they had a hot dog cart inside. I'm like, what is this? A hot dog cart inside. And I'd broken my arm, and so I had a cast on. And at the time, Scott Baio was there. This is early Scott Baio. And the movie, sorry about that. And the movie Bugsy Malone had just come out. Do you remember that movie? Yeah. Right. So the movie had just come out, and I was like, that's Bugsy Malone. So Bugsy Malone signed my cast, and then you could go
indoor hot dogs. What's up?
And indoor hot dogs. And then you could have any of the Marvel artists do a picture for you. So I went over to. They would do your favorite Marvel character. Now, I have many regrets in my life. And one of them is I went to John Romita. And at the time, my favorite hero in the Marvelverse was Daredevil, because he was very urban, very New York. And I loved his disability, and his superpower. So I had John Romita draw Daredevil. It wasn't his character. And I should have been, and all of my, my comic people who are even infinitely more versed than I are like, why'd you do that, dummy? But I was like, I had it on my wall forever. My Daredevil, but Bring on the Bad Guys. So I was always excited to play a villain. I've always loved the villains, because they seem to have the most colors. Yeah. My joke is like, villains are the most fun to play, but they're the worst for your bank account, because you're always going to die.
Sure. Yeah.
You'll never make it the whole run of the show. Yeah. But
you have fun along the way. Exactly. There's been quite a few questions about, do you love playing villains, and is it a choice to kind of do that? Do you find that once you do it well, then, the offers start rolling in for that? Or do you purposefully choose those characters because you find them the most fun?
That's a great question. It all changed for me. As soon as the gray started coming into my hair at around like 40, everything switched, because up until then I'm just playing cops and FBI agents. Right. And as soon as the gray came in, I'm playing bad guys. And it was
funny, isn't it? Hollywood's like, you got a bit of gray. I know what we can do.
You're a bad guy. And now you know, as the world has changed, you know, there's just a lot of bad white guys out there. So that's sort of my milieu.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but now, luckily in the last like few years, I've played a bunch of good guys, which is great because then I was like, I don't die, you know, or eventually sometimes you do, but I love
And that's so your personality as well.
right.
It's really interesting that you know, I was rewatching this episode and you're
Right.
just so bad as hair. You know, you're just like, there's been a bunch of comments in here and it's the same, that you just love to hate Daniel Whitehall. He's just so evil, you know. And then you meet you and you just the most bubbly, just kind, just like super considerate person that it's, you know, it's you're definitely not typecast as the villain, but I
Right.
guess once you do it well and like really go for it, and like you say with drama training of Shakespeare, that there is a, you know, villains are Shakespearean in their
Absolutely.
kind of poise and yeah, just horrendous objectives, and I can see why you had fun with it.
And that's, you know, that was the biggest challenge, is fitting it into the box, because they're so often they're very operatic, right? The bad guys are just
Yeah.
so big, and you know
Yeah.
you can't do that on TV because it comes
Yeah.
into people's houses and it'll be strange. So it was just trying to find the pitch, but I mean, it, it, it was super, and working. You talk about working with all these actors, like, you know, getting to work with Kyle MacLachlan and getting to work with Haley and all. I mean, it was just like, it was super fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
So is that something that um you know, how do you find, you've been working for decades, so you clearly are like, you know, have figured it out, but how do you find that level when you come in and you go, okay, this is a TV show, so it needs to be slightly smaller? Or would you have played, say if they came to you and said, we're going to do what Daniel Whitehall in the next Marvel movie, would you kind of change it a little bit? Or how do you find that? Does that come from the director? Does that come from the other actors? Like, how do
I
you?
think it's just instinct, right? So then you
Yeah.
create your character. You know, sometimes it's a struggle, and it takes a while to find it, and sometimes you have this instant hit. Um, like I remember when I did Dollhouse, because when I came into Dollhouse, I only came in to do the pilot. I came in to do one scene in the pilot, but there was something about this character. I knew exactly who he was, and I was like, he's Sir Francis Walsingham. He's Elizabeth's sort of spy master, you know, Elizabeth the First, and it just hit me. And then I remember, like, by the end of the day, Joss, because I was only there for one episode, and Joss and Olivia were like, all right, we'll see you in September. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm just here for one. And then I had a character, right? And so for this one, realizing sort of the restrictions, because you would look silly or over the top if you really were doing doing Red Skull, because you know, because that's on a giant screen. So I was like, okay, so it's going to be all about his intellect and subtlety, and him knowing he's the smartest man in the world. And then I got all those cool catchphrases, like, you know, discovery requires experimentation, and
So awful.
and you know, because it was interesting, you know, hearing Simon talk about how he had to find his character at the table read, right? And you know, that's what it is, because it happens quickly, right? And you're just, but on that first day playing the World War II periods, I was trying stuff, and you know, that's the hardest thing, is like to rehearse in public and rehearse in front of all of the executives, and Jed and Marissa, who you love. You know, I have a strong aversion to disappointing people I love, and right. So it's just like, you're like, oh god, you know, because you're trying things, because you only know if it works when you do it. Like, you can practice all the stuff you want in your bedroom, in my hotel room. I can practice it, but when you get there and you're in the place with the people, it's different. So you don't know. So that's what makes it exciting, and that's what makes it terrifying.
We've had quite a few questions
that
have popped up just kind of along the lines of that, of saying, how do you get into that mindset, I guess, of the villain? How do you get to that point where you then can hear what your instincts are? Is the costume really important to you? Did you have words to get into it? Do you just kind of
That's a great question. So
Feel it.
like sort of like what is your trigger or what's your launching pad?
Yeah, exactly.
It's different for every character. And that's what I find is like, that's the fun and that's the challenge of like figuring out for each character you're building, because it's always going to be different. You know, there's some characters where you go like, I just know it. I don't have to do any work.
Yeah.
It just happens. I can just show up. And there's other ones where no, you need a sort of a entree. So sometimes I'll have a word, I'll have a phrase, or I'll have a piece of music, you know, sort of, or figuring, you know, usually it's like figuring out their worldview, you know, to get like super boring and inside baseball. Like, you know, we call it like, for an actor, you call it like your spine, right? Your character has a spine. And the idea of a spine, or super objective, is that it's some action that you can be playing if there's no one in the room at any time. It's something that is your character. It's sort of, and if you could even do a fun trick where you go like, what is my, what's Elizabeth's or what's Reed's like personal spine, like, and you'll see that there's something that everything you do in your life sort of hinges off of. But when you're building a character is, you know, you like, you need to have something, especially in TV, because what makes TV more challenging than the movies is you don't know what you're going to do week to week. And especially in something as top secret as this. So you have to sort of, you have to plan for something that you don't know. Right. So they can throw you a curveball and you're going, oh, well, I created this whole character, but now, you know, my joke is like, oh, I'm a single guy, and saying, no, you've got a family of 7 and you live in a hut by a lake. You're like, oh, okay. I have to reconsider all this stuff. So it can be more challenging. Like the show I'm working on right now, which I've had like 2 weeks, I have all the scripts, I have all 8 episodes. So it's such a delight, because you're going, okay, I know exactly who this guy is. But you know, I always say there's 2 types of parts that you get to play. Yeah. There's as an actor, and see if you agree with this. Yeah. It's where the one is where I hope I'm good enough. Yeah. Right. Where you're going like, oh, this is going to require everything I have. I hope I'm good enough. And then the other one is like, I hope I can make this good. And that's, you know, so there's a lot of TV where you're like, oh, I hope I can make this good. I hope, you know, because this is not a word. These aren't words that a human would ever say, but I'm going to try my best. But this is one of those where like, I hope I'm good enough, where you just like, you can't wait to get there. And you go home and you figure, I'll tell you honestly, why not? We're here. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll go like, I think you should have had a British accent like the comic book. And I'll think about it. I'm like, yeah, because then we could have justified this, and this doesn't make sense. And like, you're like, it never, you know, there's certain parts where you think about it all the time. And like I say with this one, I'm glad he got to come back, because I just gotten to the place by this episode where I'm able to have fun. So I know who he is now, so I can show up and I'm not worried, like, is this going to work, or how am I going to play the scene? Like you know who he is, so it's comfortable and you can sort of step right into it. And then, you know, then he was done. Right. But it was really funny, because I remember right before I shot the scene where I get killed, the first cameraman said to me, he's like, don't worry, you'll be back. It's Marvel. No one died. And then, of course, every time I come back, he's like, see, I told you.
Yeah, I know. You have such I mean, I feel like drunk on your energy right now. You're just so positive and have this force of curiosity, it feels like, for acting and creating characters and kind of the you know, everybody involved in it. You've mentioned camera guys, makeup, costume. How, like, for people watching this that, you know, maybe don't exactly know what they want to do with their lives, or plans have been derailed because of COVID, it feels like you're doing your passion for your career, right? Sure. And it feels like even after decades of doing it, you know, obviously we see the shows that you get and that you're in, but there's a lot of rejection that comes along with any actor's journey. Constant. I guess my question is, constant, brilliant. It really is, right? It's like
never ends.
Never ends. How do you, I guess, how did you figure to do this as a career? And what advice would you give to people that have a passion, or, you know, is it worth trying to pursue your passion as a career, even though it comes with, you know, because that sometimes makes the rejections more painful because you really care about it.
You're so great. I love you. I love talking with you. These are great questions. Okay, I'll start at the beginning. What I knew I was very lucky. I was very lucky to know by 10th grade, you know, sophomore year in high school, I knew 100% this is what I was doing. I was very lucky to go to a school that had an amazing theater teacher, and we did amazing, incredible plays well beyond our years. In fact, I think I learned everything I really needed to know then. And then by the great fortune that I had nothing to do with of growing up in New York City, agents were able to come see my plays in high school. So I had a manager from the time I was 17. I've never had another job. I've been really lucky. I've earned my living as an actor. Now, advice to people now, and then I'll come back to rejection. Advice to people now, you know what's exciting about now that is unprecedented in the entire, you know, in the entire history of this, is that you can do it yourself. Yeah. You don't need, I have to wait. I have to wait for parts to come. I have to wait for the thing that fits right. And I have to do, you know, I for every amazing, you know, Kilimanjaro mountain peak, you know, I have to, like, there's a lot of valleys in there. Right. Yeah. And we're just paying the bills, especially because it's my business, right? This is my living. It's how I earn a living. But what's so exciting now is you don't need a network or a movie studio to make a movie. You can make a movie on this amazing machine, on this crazy machine, and you can start a podcast. You can do what you're doing. And that's the one advice I always give to younger people now, and they ask me, I'm like, just do what you want to do. Get together a bunch of your friends like you've done, make your own movies, work with people you love, you know, figure out who's good at what, and you can do it. You don't need anyone. And we're seeing that's becoming truer and truer. And then you get to, because I feel like I might not have had the sense of self enough to do it in my younger years, but it would be neat to define yourself before someone else gets to define you. Because we talked about it, you know, so I get the gray in my hair, suddenly I'm a villain. But before that, you know, I had my 5 years of playing only lawyers, or 5 years of only playing boyfriends, or whatever it is, you know, and I was just like, I have to take what comes. But, and then you talk about positivity. I go, you know, the thing that I found certainly in the second half of my career is you get much more from saying yes than saying no. So you just dive in with both feet, and 99% of the time, it just turns out to be an incredible experience. And it leads to things you can't, because you can make a plan, but I always think about that John Lennon quote of like, life's what happens while you're making other plans. Like it's going to happen. But the rejection, you know, the hardest thing, and I can only speak to it as an actor, but I'm sure you could extrapolate it to other parts of the business and certainly writers. But it's like, it's almost all rejection. I call it, and forgive me, I call it getting kicked in the dick on a regular basis, right? Like constantly. And like now, especially because you're able to audition through this machine, everyone's like, yeah, audition for it. So you put together this whole thing. You have to set up your movie studio that now you've created in your house. Yeah. And you've got to put your soul into it. You've got to prepare, you've got to do a good job. And then, and it's a funny thing, because I can read a script or sides, and I know with 100% accuracy whether I'm going to get it or not. Wow. But I still audition for everything that comes my way, because I feel like I've learned something from doing that. I've stretched a muscle. It's like going to the gym. Mm-hmm. Also, I have probably some sort of like weird work ethic fear that, like, if you just wait for the ones that the universe is gonna vex you, and nothing will happen. But the hardest thing, I think, for a person in our business is that you have to like not take it personally. Yes. And I think that's an incredible challenge. I mean, we were just recounting yesterday. I'm like, of all the things that I put myself on tape for, where I knew I wasn't going to get it. When you're doing accents, you're doing a great job. Like, that's the other thing too. I just came across this Marion Seldes quote about this, and I've always believed it's true. And I'm going to paraphrase what she says. She's like, you just keep yourself ready, and the part that's yours will be your part. And it's true. Yeah. It's like, there's something in the alchemy when it fits, when it's right, right, and it just happens. But you have to keep your head straight, because it's just like a lot of no, and it's very difficult to not take it personally, right? That's the trick. But also, as they said, like, how do you handle all the rejection on that show, Slings and Arrows? That's why we drink.
Yeah.
So
but you do have to find it's hard, because yes, when a part's yours, it's meant to be, or say, like, if that place at college is yours, it will end up, you will find a way to get in there, or whatever that job is, that role is, that person is that you really want to be with. But it is yours. But then there is you kind of have to be ready for it when it comes, so it's like, maybe you were never going to get those auditions or the millions of self-tapes. I'm sure we both do. But it's like, you are learning something in those moments that is, you don't know at the time, but it's going to be that, and sometimes thinking like that's exhausting, but it is true that
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And because I have a quote, or I don't have a quote, I just have what I say to myself, and I go, I either want to get the job or I want to make friends.
Sure.
Right. So, like, even if it didn't, you're just paying it forward, you're putting that energy out there. But it can be exhausting. And there's days where you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Right. Because it's an amazing life, that we get to have, where you have these incredible experiences, but there is, Stella Adler always said an actor needs to have the heart of a rose and the hide of a rhinoceros.
Wow.
Right. And it's true, but but it's that is the conflict that's so hard to sort of balance, because to do your work, you have to be vulnerable, but to have your career, you have to be tough, right? Like I said, I'm a schmuck, and every once in a while I'll have a low day. I'm like, let's see what people are saying about me on the internet. You're like, oh no, why did I do this? Right? I know better. And then I take it, I'm like, you deserve it. You deserve it for looking. And
that's the same with everything, now. You can go on Facebook and look at comments that people left on your photo from a year ago, or whatever it is, that when we're feeling a little bit low, it's almost like we seek out that kind of the negativity to reinforce, like, oh, this is why, this isn't happening for me, because I think it's a challenge that everybody has. And I love that. Have a heart like a rose and a skin like a rhinoceros. And that's kind of, that's a great analogy for life, right? That you can get through anything. I mean, look at what we've all done this past year, but don't lose that rose openness, fragility. That's so important too. Yeah,
you can't. Well, you have it. I mean, you're so ebullient and effervescent, and so you're like a bright light. So you have that, and you have that just to the infinity.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's one of those. It's a life's journey, isn't it? To try to get that balance of being, strong, but open and vulnerable. And so the episode finished. A bunch of people have come into the Zoom, so I'm gonna invite a couple of people in, see if we have any questions.
Brilliant. This is awesome.
So this is like, I know it really flew by. I can't believe we're I'm about to get chucked out.
Hi again.
Hello.
Hold on, I'll turn on my camera. Hi.
Oh my gosh, hi.
How are you?
I'm
How's
good.
It going?
Good.
Do you have a question?
No, you actually answered my question in the chat, which I was really grateful for, about the period piece.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
Yeah,
okay,
and I just want to say that this was like perfect timing for the episode and everything. I just watched Captain America: The First Avenger last night.
Right.
And then I totally forgot that we were doing the this episode today.
That's so great.
Gosh, that's so great.
You have a question?
Oh wait, sorry. I just invited a couple more people in, and I think I've messed up our sound a little bit. TJ, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hi.
Hi.
I think there's somebody else coming in as well, so just maybe mute yourself, whoever I just invited in, and put your video on if you want, so we can see you.
Brilliant.
TJ, do you have a question?
Yeah. Well, actually, I have to say something. I watched Moneyball yesterday. And
cool, TJ.
yeah, and I saw you were the Indians general manager. I saw you there.
I love doing that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and I have a question for you too. Do you ever go off script?
Yes, I love to improvise, and I've had a long. I've done a lot of comedy improv. I've been on lots of teams. I've done it for years, so I love the make 'em ups. So if it's allowed, sometimes I'll do it just to get us into the scenes, and or in the middle of the scene. But if there's room to improvise, I love to, and I'll tell you why. Because sometimes if you're saying stuff over and over again, it can get you get into sort of a pattern, right? And you sort of know what's going to happen. And there's nothing better than shaking it up a little bit. Even if it's not going to be used on film, it's a really fun thing to do. Now on a show like this, it's a complicated move because it's a stylized show and your character's going to speak in a really specific vernacular. I can't remember if I tried to. I know I wouldn't have been allowed to because everything's like super, it's Marvel, right? So there's a certain amount of control. So there's places where you can do it and there's places where you can't. But yes, I love to do it, sometimes to people's dismay. That was a great question, TJ.
That was a great question, TJ. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem.
Richard, hello. Sorry, I muted you just for
Hello.
sound purposes. How are you?
I'm excellent. This is like winning the lottery. This is the first one of these that I've actually been able to see live, and I managed to get into this. So,
oh my God,
amazing.
So cool.
Well,
Richard, where are you, man? Where are you?
I'm in Lincolnshire.
Whereabouts in Lincolnshire?
There's a little village called Pinchbeck. It's about half an hour, 40 minutes drive away from Peterborough. It's quite nice.
I love Lincolnshire. I spent a lot of time there. I was just talking to a guy the other day. He was like, "Oh, I just came from holiday in Skegness." I'm like, "I've been to Skegness," and but I I
went to Butlins in Skegness years ago.
Oh my gosh, a classic.
Sorry, what's your question, man?
First of all, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is one of my favorite shows of all time, and you're both excellent in it. I had to say that, and pretty much everyone is excellent in it as well, but you're both wonderful. I've been working my way back through. I've been doing all of the Avengers stuff in chronological order, and I just started series 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again. So I actually saw your first episode today, Reed, and was reminded of how cool you are, frankly. And my question is basically, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is near perfect, and I wouldn't change anything about it. But if you could have one other character or actor from any of the other Avengers stuff, like the Netflix shows or Agent Carter or the films or anything, who would you have that you didn't have on the show?
Well, Elizabeth, you should probably answer this question.
Oh God, it's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, I would have loved
There's
to
a
have
lot of
Black
choice.
Widow. There's a lot of choice. I would love
Yes.
Black Widow to have come on, and the Hulk. They would be because I feel like Simmons would have just fangirled over Black Widow, and then I think Fitz would have just loved the Hulk to just, scientifically kind of see what was going on there.
I would just say Taika Waititi's character from Ragnarok. I feel like he should be in everything. I would put him on. I would like that character on every single show. The Rock guy. Yeah.
I would think it would have been cool to have Daredevil on, because in the canon of the series, he and Sky/Daisy were both raised in the same orphanage.
For sure.
So there's a good chance they might recognize each other.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
wait, you're a superhero now?
Absolutely.
Well,
would have
there's
been
a spin-off right there.
There you go.
Thank you so much for your question.
That was awesome. Thanks,
That
Richard.
was so great. Reed,
Yes.
thank you. You've just been an utter joy. I'm buzzing. I'm sure everybody else is too that have got to watch this and then listen later on the podcast. Thank you for being here. You've just been amazing.
Thank you. Like I said, I adore you, and it was so honored when you inquired if I was available. And this was such a pleasure, and thank you for all of your amazing questions. And it's just so much fun to talk about all this stuff. Have an amazing day, night, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. This is where
All
we're
right.
gonna invite in all the Zoom, so you'll get to see people read wave,
Great.
and then I'll end the Zoom. But thank you everybody
Brilliant.
for being here.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, you guys.
questions I didn't get to I'll be answering them on the podcasts, and that comes out on Tuesday.
Brilliant.
Okay, here we go. Thanks again,
Yeah.
Reed. You're just so
Pleasure. No,
brilliant.
thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Reed. See you.
Bye, TJ. Bye, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye, Richard.
Thank you. This
Bye.
is where
Bye.
invite
Hey, Julie.
Great.
Hey,
Just so
Julie.
cool.
Oh,
Bye. Nice to meet you. Awesome. Yours, Marvel.
Hey, Dra.
Thank you guys. Yeah,
Hey,
where's
Paul.
that?
Hydra team up.
Thank you for being here.
Indeed, you are amazing.
You guys,
Bye.
great
Thank you so
talk.
much.
Thank you, guys.